It was a bright and sunny morning in Barcelona when Lionel Messi's phone started ringing. He picked it up and heard a friendly but serious voice on the other end. It was the head of the University of Barcelona, and he had a special request. "Mr. Messi, it is such an honor to talk to you," the man said. "We are organizing a big event about success in sports, and we would love for you to come as a surprise guest." Messi usually said no to these kinds of things. He was always busy and didn't like speaking in public too much. He was about to say no when the man added something important. "I understand you are very busy, but all the money we raise from this event will help young kids who love sports but don't have enough money to follow their dreams. If you come, it will help a lot." Messi sat quietly for a moment, thinking. He always cared about kids who wanted to play soccer but faced big challenges. He wanted to help. "I'm interested," he said. "But what will I have to do?" The man sounded happy that Messi didn't say no right away. "We want to do something special," he explained. "You won't be on stage or giving a big speech. You will just sit in the audience like a normal person. No cameras, no news reporters, just a real moment with students. At the end, we will tell everyone you are here, and you can say a few words if you want." Messi liked this idea. He had spent his whole life in front of cameras, and this felt different. It felt real. "Who is giving the lecture?" Messi asked. He wanted to know more. "A professor named Carlos Benitez," the man said. "He studies sports and has some very strong opinions about what makes athletes successful." Messi quickly searched for the professor's name on his phone. He found some of his articles. Some of them were interesting, but others were controversial. This made Messi even more curious. "All right," Messi said. "I'll come, but I want to make sure my visit really helps the kids. I don't want to be there just for attention." "Of course, Mr. Messi. Your presence will help us raise a lot more money for scholarships," the man promised. "I will send you all the details, including a secret way to enter so no one sees you before the big moment." After hanging up, Messi looked out his window at the city. He had won so many trophies, but he always felt he should use his fame for something more. This event, he thought, could be a new way to inspire people, not by playing soccer but by just being there. What Messi didn't know was that this simple decision would lead to one of the most surprising moments of his life. The day of the event arrived quickly. The big hall at the University of Barcelona was full. Every seat was taken. Students, teachers, and sports fans were excited to hear Professor Benitez speak. Messi arrived secretly through a small side door. He wore jeans, a gray hoodie, and a black beanie to hide his face. He sat quietly in the back row where the lights were dim. At exactly 6 p.m., the head of the university walked on stage. "Welcome everyone to this special event about success in sports," he said with a big smile. "Tonight we have a great speaker, a man who loves to challenge what we think about sports, Professor Carlos Benitez." People clapped politely. The professor walked onto the stage. He was an older man with gray hair, glasses, and a confident smile. He wore a smart but simple suit. "Thank you for the kind introduction," he said. "And thank you all for coming. I promise that after tonight, you will start questioning everything you believe about sports heroes." Messi listened carefully. He wanted to hear what the professor had to say. The first slides on the big screen showed numbers and facts about sports, money, and success. Some people in the audience whispered to each other, surprised by what they saw. "As you can see," the professor said, "success in modern sports is not just about talent. It is mostly about money. The best players are the ones who get the best training, the best medical care, and the most expensive help." Messi thought the professor had some good points, but he also felt like he was missing something important. Then, something unexpected happened. A giant picture of Messi appeared on the screen. It was a photo from his last match with Inter Miami. "And here we have the perfect example of what I'm talking about," the professor said, his voice sharper now. "Lionel Messi, the so-called greatest player in the world, is actually just lucky and part of a big marketing plan." The room went silent. Some students shifted in their seats, uncomfortable. "Let's look at the facts," the professor continued. "A small boy with health problems is chosen by a rich club that pays for his expensive treatments. This same club gives him the best coaches, the best teammates, and builds a whole system to make him a star." Messi stayed calm in his seat. He had heard many people say things like this before. But what surprised him was how the professor made it sound like Messi's years of hard work didn't matter at all. The professor pointed at graphs showing how much money FC Barcelona had spent on young players. Any player with Messi's body type could have been just as good if they had this kind of support, he claimed. "In fact, I believe there are thousands of kids in poor neighborhoods who have even more natural talent than Messi, but they never get the same chances." The room felt tense. Some students looked upset. Others seemed to agree. A student raised his hand. When the professor called on him, he asked, "But what about things like hard work, discipline, and staying strong under pressure?" "Great question," the professor said with a small smile. "But those things are also shaped by privilege. It's easy to have a strong mindset when you have the best sports psychologists helping you since you were 12 years old. And that's when something completely unexpected happened." Messi slowly stood up from his seat in the back of the room. Some people near him turned their heads, but they didn't realize who he was yet. He took a few steps forward. Then someone gasped, "Wait, is that Messi?" More people turned to look. The whispering grew louder. The professor, who had been speaking so confidently, stopped talking. His face changed when he saw Messi walking toward the front. Messi took off his beanie, revealing his face completely. Now there was no doubt, it was really him. A wave of shock moved through the audience. Some students clapped, others just stared with wide eyes. Messi reached the front of the room, stood next to the professor, and took the microphone. He didn't look angry. He looked calm but serious. "I understand what you are saying, Professor," Messi said, his voice steady. "But I want to tell you something. Talent is not enough. Money is not enough. You need something more. You need love for the game. You need to fight every single day, even when no one believes in you." The room was completely silent, hanging on to every word. "I was small. I was sick. I had to leave my home at a young age. But I never stopped working. I never stopped dreaming." Messi turned to the audience. "There are many kids with great talent. That is true. But talent alone doesn't make you great. It's about what you do with it." The students clapped. Then they stood up. Soon, the whole room was giving Messi a standing ovation. The professor, who had been so sure of his words before, now stood quietly. He nodded slightly, showing a bit of respect. Messi handed the microphone back and walked back to his seat. The event had started as a normal lecture, but now it had turned into something unforgettable. A student sitting near Messi looked at him again. His eyes got really big when he realized who he was sitting next to. He whispered to his friend, and soon quiet murmurs spread through the back of the big classroom. More and more students turned their heads, whispering to each other, their faces full of shock. Professor Benitez, who was in the middle of teaching his lesson, noticed the distraction. He stopped speaking and looked towards the back of the room. "It looks like something interesting is happening back there," he said, raising an eyebrow. "Would someone like to tell me what's going on?" For a few seconds no one spoke. The room felt tense, like everyone was waiting for someone else to say something first. Then finally a student took a deep breath and spoke. His voice was a little shaky but clear enough for everyone to hear. "Professor, I think Lionel Messi is here in the classroom." The moment those words left his mouth, all heads turned at once toward the back of the room. The quiet murmurs turned into gasps of surprise. Was it true? Could it really be him? And yes, it was. There, sitting among the students, was Lionel Messi, the football legend himself. The very man they had just been talking about in their lesson was right there, listening. The entire auditorium went silent. Hundreds of eyes stared at Messi. He had come in quietly, hoping to blend in with the crowd, dressed in simple clothes with a cap pulled low over his head. But now his cover was completely gone. Professor Benitez, looking surprised, adjusted his glasses as if he needed to make sure his eyes weren't tricking him. His face went through several emotions: shock, confusion, and then a quick attempt to act like he was still in control of the situation. "Well, this is unexpected," the professor finally said, forcing himself to sound calm. But his voice had lost some of its earlier confidence. "If this is really you, Mr. Messi, then this makes our lesson even more interesting." Messi, sitting in his chair, felt his face grow warm. Even after so many years in the spotlight, he still wasn't completely used to being the center of attention, especially in a place like this. On a football field, he was in his comfort zone. But here, in a university with people analyzing his life and career, it felt completely different. At the front of the room, the university rector, who was in charge of the event, looked very nervous. He had planned to reveal Messi's presence only at the end of the conference as a surprise. But now that plan had completely fallen apart. He quickly got up from his seat and walked over to the professor. He leaned in and whispered something, probably trying to calm the situation and bring the lesson back on track. But it was too late for that. Some students had already pulled out their phones, aiming them at Messi. The murmurs started again, growing louder. Some students were excited, unable to believe that Messi was actually in the same room as them. Others were curious. What was he going to do now? After all, just a few minutes ago, the professor had said some strong words about his career. Professor Benitez listened to the rector for a moment, then made a decision. Instead of stepping back or softening his words, he decided to take advantage of the situation. "Mr. Messi," he said, speaking into the microphone and looking right at him. "Since you are here, would you like to come up on stage and answer what we have been saying about you? There is no better way to learn than by hearing directly from the person we are discussing." His words sounded polite, but there was also a clear challenge in them. Some students shifted in their seats, feeling nervous about where this was going. Others leaned forward, excited to see what would happen next. The event organizers exchanged worried glances. This was not the way things were supposed to go. Messi had been invited to quietly sit in on the lecture and then make a brief appearance at the end. Instead, this had turned into something unexpected, an unplanned debate in front of everyone. Messi sat still for a few seconds that felt like forever. His mind, trained to make fast decisions on the football field, now had to decide what to do in this completely new situation. He had three choices. He could politely decline and stay quiet. He could stand up and leave. Or, he could face the question head-on and say what he really thought. A student sitting next to him leaned in and whispered, "You don't have to do it if you don't want to. This professor likes to start arguments." Messi gave the student a small smile, appreciating his kindness. Then he made his decision. Slowly he stood up. The moment he did, a fresh wave of murmurs filled the room. Even though Messi wasn't very tall, his presence felt huge. "I'll answer from here if that's okay," he said. His voice was clear and strong, reaching every corner of the room without needing a microphone. Years of giving instructions on loud football fields had taught him how to project his voice. Professor Benitez nodded, looking both surprised and pleased. He had not expected Messi to accept the challenge, but now he had the opportunity to test his theories against the man himself. "Of course, as you prefer," the professor said. "The question is simple. Do you think your success is because of your own talent, or do you agree that money, good teams, and marketing helped you a lot?" Once again, the entire room went silent. Everyone was waiting. Some expected Messi to get angry. Others thought he might try to defend himself. At the front, the university rector still looked nervous. This was not the calm, inspiring moment he had planned. Near the door, the university's media team quickly typed on their phones. They were probably trying to prepare for the possibility that this would make headlines. Messi, for the first time since the class had started, took off his cap completely, revealing his face to everyone. But to everyone's surprise, he did not look angry or offended. Instead, he looked thoughtful, calm, like he had truly considered the question. Messi stood tall, showing no fear even as hundreds of eyes stayed locked on him. The room, usually full of little noises, papers rustling, students whispering, was now completely still. Even Professor Benitez, who had spoken so confidently before, seemed to be waiting with some tension. Messi took a deep breath, looked around the room, and finally spoke. "Professor Benitez," he said, his voice steady, "first, I want to thank you for being honest. Many people only tell me nice things. It's refreshing to hear different opinions." The students murmured in surprise. No one had expected Messi to start by saying thank you. "And I must say, you are right about one important thing. I have been very lucky in my life." Messi paused, and then a small smile appeared on his face. "I was lucky to be born into a family that taught me important values, things that money can't buy. I was lucky to have a football with me all the time, even sleeping with it like a stuffed toy when I was little." He took a small step forward, his voice growing stronger. "I was very lucky that my parents gave up everything for me. They left our home, our family, and our friends to take me to a new country when I was only 13. I was lucky to find a football club that believed in me when other teams thought I was too small." His voice softened, and everyone listened closely. "And yes, I was lucky to get medical treatment when my family could not afford it. I was lucky to train at one of the best football schools in the world. I was lucky to play with amazing teammates who made me better." The entire room sat in silence, waiting for what Messi would say next. Professor Benitez nodded, like Messi's words proved his point. "But, Professor," Messi said, looking straight at him, "if success is only about luck and good training, why don't we see many players like me from La Masia every year? Barcelona trained hundreds of kids, gave them the same coaches, the same advice, and the same chances." Messi pointed at the screen where his picture had been shown earlier. "Why didn't this system create more stars like me? Why did so many of my old teammates, some even more talented than me when we were kids, not reach the same level?" He didn't sound angry, just curious, as if he had thought about this before. "Maybe it's because, besides luck, which I know I had, there's something more. There's waking up early to train even when your whole body hurts. There's practicing the same move 1,000 times until it's perfect. There's choosing to live a strict life for 20 years, giving up fun things other kids enjoy. He paused, his voice deeper now. There's the strength to handle people always judging you, the courage to stand up after every injury, and the will to keep playing even after painful losses. There's the pressure of knowing millions of people expect you to be great every time you play, and that one mistake could be talked about for days. Some students started nodding, touched by his words. And most importantly, Professor, there's love, real love for the game. The kind you can't fake. The kind that makes you dream about a ball when you're a kid and still feel the same joy after thousands of matches. The kind that makes scoring a goal feel just as special whether it's in front of 100,000 people or alone in practice. Messi smiled as if remembering something special, then continued. I'll tell you a secret. Every single day, even now, I feel like I have to prove I deserve to be here. I never take my success for granted because I know my weakness is better than anyone. I'm not the tallest, the strongest, or the fastest. But I turned those weaknesses into challenges and worked hard to improve in other ways. He looked at the students, his eyes scanning the room. To all of you who are working hard to become great in your fields, I want to say, yes, luck matters. Opportunities are important. But without hard work, sacrifice, and passion, luck won't take you very far. That's true in football, in medicine, in engineering, any career you choose. Then Messi turned back to the professor with a warm smile. So yes, Professor Benitez, you are right to say I was lucky and had many chances. It would be wrong for me to deny that. But if I may add to your thoughts, true success isn't just about having luck. It's about being ready when luck knocks on your door. And it's about not giving up when luck seems to disappear. For a moment, the room was silent. Then the students started clapping. The applause grew louder until everyone was standing. Students, teachers, all clapping, some even with tears in their eyes. Professor Benitez stood still, clearly surprised. He had expected Messi to argue with him, but instead he got a lesson in humility and wisdom. The clapping went on for several minutes. People weren't just cheering for Messi as a football star. They were cheering for his honesty, for his powerful message. When the applause finally started to die down, something unexpected happened. Professor Benitez walked down from the stage, slowly making his way to Messi. When he reached him, he extended his hand. Mr. Messi, he said loud enough for all to hear, my job as a professor is to spark discussions. But my job is also to learn. And today, I have learned an important lesson. Messi shook his hand without hesitation. Some students took pictures, but most just watched, amazed by this moment, an academic professor and a football legend meeting with respect. The heart of true learning, the professor continued, is not holding on to our old ideas, but being open to changing them when new wisdom appears. And today, your words have made me rethink some of my beliefs about success. The university's leader, happy with how things turned out, stepped forward with a microphone. I believe we have witnessed something special today, he said, smiling. A real conversation between different worlds that makes us all wiser. How about we open the floor for questions? What followed was not the usual Q&A session. No one asked Messi for autographs or about his next club transfer. Instead, students asked about learning, dealing with failure, balancing talent with effort, and handling the weight of expectations. Messi answered each question with honesty and deep thought, impressing even those who had admired him for years. A sports psychology student stood up. After winning everything, how do you stay motivated to keep improving every day? He asked. I never think about what I've won, Messi replied simply. Every morning I wake up thinking about what I can do better today. The day I stop feeling that drive to improve, even in small things, will be the day I retire. At the end of the event, Professor Benitez and Messi sat down together for almost an hour, talking in private. People nearby saw the professor taking notes excitedly, while Messi shared personal stories he had never told before. In the following days, a video of the exchange spread across the internet. But it wasn't because of any controversy. It was because people saw something rare, a deep, respectful conversation in a world full of arguments. Media worldwide praised the moment. Instead of becoming a debate filled with anger, it turned into a learning experience, thanks to Messi's maturity. 3 weeks later, Professor Benitez published a new article, Rethinking Success, More Than Just Luck and Privilege. He admitted his old theories had flaws. He wrote about how success is shaped by both outside help and personal choices. This article became the most famous work of his career. The University of Barcelona, seeing how powerful the event was, started a new scholarship called Messi, Talent with Hard Work for Young Athletes from Poor Backgrounds. Messi not only gave money to start the program, he also promised to return each year to mentor the students. What started as just a simple talk turned into something much more meaningful, Messi said at the scholarship's launch. It reminded me that sometimes our biggest impact happens off the field in moments we don't expect. A year later, the first group of scholarship students was chosen. They came from different backgrounds. A young gymnast struggling with growth issues like Messi once did, a refugee footballer from Syria, and a Paralympic athlete from a poor neighborhood in Barcelona. As for Professor Benitez, he changed the way he worked. He now combines statistics with real-life stories, believing that success cannot be understood with numbers alone. It must also be seen through human experience. In a later interview, Messi was asked what he learned from that day. "For most of my life, I spoke with my feet," he said. "That day, I realized that my words could help people too. Sometimes, the most important lessons come not from trophies, but from the challenges we overcome." Perhaps the greatest lesson from that day was this: true learning happens when different worlds meet with respect and open hearts. One student later wrote, "We came to hear about success and talent, but what we really got was a lesson in resilience and the power of honest conversations." Both the professor and the footballer had proven that even in a divided world, a simple moment of understanding could bring people closer together. If you enjoyed this story, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and let me know what you think. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more exciting stories filled with adventure, mystery, and unforgettable moments. Your support means the world. It keeps these stories coming and the creativity flowing. Thanks for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next video.